All right, y'all, let's talk about how Trump is getting torched at these town halls, why even Republicans are turning on Putin, and how the world is basically linking up against this whole mess. The polls are looking rough, the boos are getting louder, and Trump's grip on his base? Yeah, it's slipping. Even MAGA isn't rocking with McConnell anymore, but somehow Putin is even less popular. And outside the die-hard Trump cult, people are just not buying what he's selling. On foreign policy, on domestic issues, on anything. So what's really going on here? Why is Trump catching heat from all sides? And is this the beginning of the end for his influence? Watch the clips, and I'll be back to break it down. Roll it.
And joining me now, we have Democratic Congresswoman from California, Sara Jacobs. She is a member of the House Armed Services and Foreign Affairs Committees. Welcome. It's always good to see you. So Donald Trump canceled that joint press conference and had Vladimir Zelensky escorted out of the White House, accusing the Ukrainian president of not being ready for peace. Is that how you see it?
Not at all. I think what we saw in the Oval Office was a shameful display of the supposed leader of the free world siding with an authoritarian over a democracy. And honestly, I think Ronald Reagan and John McCain are turning in their grave right now to see that this is what has come of the Republican Party. We know that negotiations are important, and I think we all want to get to a just and lasting peace. But to do that, we need to make sure the Ukrainians are in the best possible position to be able to negotiate a peace that will actually last. Instead of what I'm concerned this will be, which will be a giveaway to Vladimir Putin, who will then just use the time and reinvade Ukraine when he feels his military and economy are stronger again.
What about, could this be some kind of public pressure campaign on Zelensky to get a better deal for the United States?
If this was a negotiation between the United States and the Ukrainians, maybe. But the fact of the matter is, this is a negotiation between the Ukrainians and the Russians. And, Alex, I used to work in international conflict resolution. We know from lots and lots of history of peace negotiations that actually a negotiation stands to the test of time. It will last longest if it is between the two actual parties to the conflict, in this case, the Ukrainians and the Russians, not the U.S. as a proxy or stand-in negotiating on behalf of one side or the other.
So some of your Republican colleagues who had hoped for a better meeting and improved relations with Kyiv, they are now publicly scolding Zelensky. Here is Senator Lindsey Graham 2 weeks ago and then after yesterday's meeting. Listen up.
I want to tell you and your people, you're the ally I've been hoping for all my life. Not one American has died defending Ukraine. You've taken our weapons and you've kicked their ass. And I'm very proud to have you as our ally. So, what did I think? Complete, utter disaster. What I saw in the Oval Office was disrespectful, and I don't know if we can ever do business with Zelensky again. He either needs to resign and send somebody over that we can do business with, or he needs to change.
Well, what a difference 2 weeks makes. I'm curious how a Republican shift could shift the support for Ukraine, swaying it, ultimately the outcome of a peace deal.
It's so interesting because it's these very same Republicans that were hammering President Biden because they didn't feel like we were giving Ukraine enough support fast enough. And now, as soon as President Trump pulls this, their tune is suddenly changing. And so I think this is incredibly in bad faith. I think it's clear that Republicans are more worried about Donald Trump than about standing up for our values and freedom and democracy around the world. And I think it's really problematic. And I think what we're going to see is that Trump sells out, gives Putin everything he wants, and then we're left holding the bag in a few years when Putin reinvades again, just stronger this time.
I was going to ask, does this potentially tip European countries toward actual military conflict with Russia?
I mean, it's really possible, right? We're seeing a lot of the Europeans talking about what they feel like they need to do now that they can't count on the Americans to step in. I think, some of that is a positive. We need to see Europe step up. They have stepped up a lot in supporting Ukraine. But I am worried that without, if they don't if they're not confident the Americans will be there, that we're going to start to see a lot more conflict in Europe, because really, the international system that we put in place after World War II that says that territorial aggression can't be rewarded, that, this is not how we do things, that's really what has held the peace in Europe for all this time. And we're seeing that disintegrate.
And for more on the fallout from President Trump's shockingly ugly meeting with his Ukrainian counterpart in the Oval Office yesterday, I'm joined now by Lisa Yasko, a member of the Ukrainian parliament. Lisa, welcome. How are Ukrainians reacting today to the blow-up we saw in the White House yesterday?
It has been absolutely a sleepless night. Ukrainians watched all the news, hardly could fall asleep. Then air siren went on. Missiles were flying, ballistic and drones flying around all Ukraine. Very emotional and hard night and morning for all of us. But for us, it's also a moment of unity, because this is the moment of truth. Unfortunately, we see that American leadership at this stage doesn't want to accept the real names of the reality, or wants to play a game shifting the names. But for Ukrainians, it is not acceptable. So for us, it's the moment when we understand that we need to continue fighting, not only with weapons, but also for truth, because it looks like now it's the moment when someone wants to rewrite the history and stop calling aggressor an aggressor, and this is not acceptable.
Lisa, you heard President Trump say Zelensky's hatred for Putin is getting in the way of the deal, and given what Putin has done to Ukraine, you could hardly blame him if it's true. What is your read on Donald Trump's relationship with the Russian president?
Well, I think Trump, once he was elected and even before, one of his main goals is actually is now to show that he can make a deal with Putin and to show that he is much stronger than Putin. And yesterday, President actually shows maybe for some part of his surrounding that they are doing very well for Americans first motto. But in fact, internationally, Trump didn't look so strong, which means that Putin is actually happy that United States are not in a stable position. So for us, we understand long term that if Trump wants to make some friends with Putin at this stage, no matter what the interest is, long term, he's not going to win. And Putin, I'm sure he was smiling all these night and morning, just because he's enjoying seeing how people who are in other continents are fighting with each other. He likes it because at this moment he gains his power over everyone.
Trump said that Zelensky doesn't even want a ceasefire. But is it as simple as that? Because we heard Zelensky say a ceasefire without security assurances would not work, considering how many times Putin has violated ceasefire agreements in the past.
Exactly. We are not ready for this ceasefire without security guarantees. So the reason why Zelensky went to Washington, went to see Trump, is to sign the deal that Ukrainians also hope that would include at least a conversation and reassurance on the security guarantees. Instead, we've heard that we need to accept the ceasefire, but we know that every ceasefire that we ever had over the last 10 years was broken by Russians. They don't care. So what is the sense of signing something that we don't believe in? And we want to be heard. We are not a victim. We are in a position of truth and reality. Yes, we are paying a lot of price. We are all full of blood because people are dying. But ceasefire for the sake of just ticking the box that there were a few minutes of the ceasefire and next day they will start killing us again. No, this is not what we want. We want real security guarantees.
President Zelensky has directly and profusely thanked the American people in tweets and public statements after a public reprimand from the president and vice president yesterday for not being thankful enough. He has thanked America many times before. In fact, here he is yesterday after the meeting.
Do you think your relationship with Donald Trump, President Trump, after today, can be salvaged?
Yes, of course, because it's relations more than two presidents. It's the historical relations, strong relations between our people. And that's why I always began with to thank your people, from our people. And this is the most important. And of course, thankful to President and of course to Congress, but first of all to your people. Your people helped to save our people.
How well do you think Zelensky is handling this situation now? What do you think it'll take to repair the relationship? Can it, must it be repaired?
You know, when I watch these words, and also I know how many messages I received myself today and this night from American people, this is very touching. I actually have tears in my eyes because I think our human hearts know the real truth, but for some political gambling, with
the other one is the DOGE program. This is very closely akin to this is very closely akin to what Bill Clinton did between 94 Bill Clinton only plans to cut 400,000 jobs between 93 and 2000.
Alright, let's break this down real quick. If you actually peep the polls, Putin is somehow even less popular than Mitch McConnell. And McConnell? That dude has been at the bottom for years. Like he's the political equivalent of soggy bread. Nobody likes him. Democrats can't stand him, and even MAGA tossed him aside like last week's leftovers. So usually he's chilling at like -30, -40 in approval ratings. But Putin? Bruh. He's so deep in the negatives he might as well be underground. Even most Republicans ain't messing with him. And that's saying a lot. And here's the wild part. Outside of the hardcore Trump cult, everything we're seeing right now is just straight up unpopular. Like wildly unpopular. Even the whole Doge thing is flopping. And Trump? Dude is getting roasted at these town halls. Straight up booed. And not just like one or two haters in the crowd. Whole sections of people just tearing into him. It's embarrassing. Whether it's his foreign policy takes, which are basically him playing footsie with dictators, or his domestic policies that just keep making life harder for regular people, nobody's vibing with it. And it's not just Democrats calling him out. He's got US politicians, Ukrainian politicians, international figures all banding together to clown this guy. The world is basically linking up like the Avengers to shut him down. And Trump? He's out here taking L's, just stacking them up like infinity stones. And the worst part? He's actually out here doing real, lasting damage to the US. Like, we're not just talking about some cringe moments or bad takes. His whole vibe is making the country weaker on the world stage. And for what? Just so he can feel like the main character? Like, bro, this ain't an episode of The Apprentice. You don't get to just fire democracy when it's inconvenient for you. People are waking up to it, though. Even in right-wing circles, the support is cracking. The hype ain't hitting the same. The man's energy is off. The crowd isn't rocking with him like they used to. And every time he opens his mouth, it's like he loses more people. And yeah, his die-hard fanboys are still out there, still coping, still riding for him no matter what. But outside that bubble, it's looking real bad for him. And it's only gonna get worse.